Alrighty, The Silence. This movie takes the racks from Borderlands 3, the eerie feeling of the birds, the quite frankly almost every other element from A Quiet Place, the swarming mentality of Piranha 3D, and my favorite, the religious isolation and uncanny valley of The Mist. That one's a little bit loose, but whatever. It's kind of there, so we're gonna make it work. I really like this movie. I like this movie because it made sense. The creatures behaved like how they should behave, and the problem couldn't just be immediately solved. In fact, they didn't actually beat them, they just moved to the cold, which would make sense considering these things are most likely prehistoric. If the cave is anything to go on, just like in Piranha 3D, where the piranha were waiting at the bottom underneath an underwater cave and then were released in an earthquake. These were released when some mountain climbers or cave explorers or whatever chipped open a cave wall and out popped they're called vesps in the movie. I call them racks because, quite frankly, that is what they look like. They look like a rack from Borderlands 3. There is not really much need to go into the family dynamics too much. They are your typical family. They have their troubles, they have their challenges, but just like with A Quiet Place, the daughter is deaf, and the family speaks sign language, and they have to remain quiet, except for Grandma. But Grandma doesn't last, well, she makes it to the most of the movie, but, whatever, that's not really saying much. This movie took a lot of elements from horror and kind of just slapped them together, and that was the only thing I didn't like, is that they did things so they could do something else to make later in the movie more challenging, which I guess a lot of movies do when you think about it. But it's never been more laid out in front of me than with this movie. The biggest example would be when they were driving and Glenn was up front and he was like, oh no, your son wanted to ride with you, so they separated them. And they put the entire family in one car and Glenn in the one in front. And my first thought was, how are they gonna kill Glenn off? Because now they've separated him from the family, so they don't have to create some stupid scenario to explain why his son survived the crash and Glenn didn't. Now Glenn can just wreck and then either be food or he can just die in the explosion or whatever. Turns out he was food. As they continue onward, we start to get this more realistic version of how these things would work. So my favorite scene in this entire movie was when the grandma was attacked. It wasn't my favorite because of the gruesomeness, even though I did love that. It was my favorite because of how realistic these things hunt. So they didn't immediately just swarm her out front. Like, a few of them pecked her, and she made noises. And then more swarmed her, and then she decided that she was going to shoot. And as soon as she shot, she basically put the nail in her coffin. Because those things swarmed the shit out of her. And also, if you pay attention, these things also make noises. They screech when they find food.
I said get the hell off my land!
To alert the others that they have found food. So it's like a two-part system. They attack and then the creature makes noise when they attack it and they find out it's food. Then they scream and alert everyone else that, hey, and this is something good. Num 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 num. And then they, you gotta be careful when you get old ladies, because sometimes, you think it's a sit-down meal, and I understand that, and sometimes, you really just want to get home and watch, How I Met Your Mother or whatever, so you gotta take your old ladies to go, and that's kind of what I understood about this movie the most. But the reason I mention all of that is because now they didn't have to interact with another person. We saw that even just barely talking will get you just slaughtered. The barn animals were absolutely butchered as well. So they now have a house. And the reason that Glenn had to be killed off earlier is because they have to go into town. And if they went into town and it was just the dad, I can't remember his name, the dad and Glenn going into town, that crazy preacher or whatever wouldn't have known that he had a daughter. So they wouldn't have, that the rest of the movie just wouldn't have happened. It would have just been them surviving, which I think would have made more sense. To be honest, the cult was only referenced for a little bit, and quite frankly, they had no purpose. The Children of the Hushed, I guess they cut out the tongues of the members, and then they just kind of live alongside of these things. I'm not entirely sure why it never really was mentioned. They just wanted the daughter because she was fertile. I assume he's just a weird cult leader and just wanted to have sex with her. That's my guess. But again, I have been wrong before, and it was never fully confirmed, so whatever, I guess we're just going to go ahead and guess. This movie had so much self-sacrifice inside of it. Usually you only get one instance. This time we had two. Old Glenny boy shooting the gun and having them come to him. Boom, boom. He's dead, torn to shreds. The grandma's was my favorite, though, because she just tackled these two dudes and screamed, and those guys were like, ah, crap. And you just saw them swarm. Again, I can't get it out of my head that these things look like racks, because they do, and I just think of Borderlands and how terrifying that entire world is, now that I think about it a little bit more. In the beginning, it's a little bit slow, but not in a bad way. I know this is something I harp on a lot. I always harp on the pace, and it's like, oh, this is too fast, this is too slow. No, the thing about pace is there needs to be some sort of balance and a consistency in relation to the time of the movie and the plot. So with this movie, you have event and then to the family. Event to the family, like with the mother and her baby on that train track. That was interesting. I think it would have been much better formatted if it looked like a video, like someone recording from their phone. I think that would have fit the theme of the movie a bit more. Just showing it didn't make any sense because we never saw the woman again. We never saw anyone else there again. It didn't matter. You know what? I was kind of happy that Robbie survived. I know that like I don't remember their names well, but the ones that they repeat their names a lot of, I do remember. Robbie was the boy she had a crush on. If you didn't know that, I like how he survived. I feel like if they did make a part 2. Which I don't know if they will, but if they did, I feel like he would be a prominent factor because now they're starting to take up archery, which makes sense. That's how you would hunt these things. But let's look at how they quote unquote beat them. They moved to the cold. This is quite frankly one of the biggest elements of horror that is overlooked. So when it comes to the birds, that's exactly what had to happen too. They would have to move to a climate where the birds weren't there. With these things, they would have to move out of the climate. With Piranha 3D, you would have to move out of that climate. So as soon as you left, let's say, in all these movies, you left the warm areas where birds live. You left the water where, you know, they live. Except for that one at the end of Piranha Double D where they started to walk. By changing the climate and by changing your surroundings, you are no longer defeating a monstrous foe. You are simply living with them. And I think that would upset people more. But as a species, I think that we could adapt to that. I know I'm harping on that a little bit too much, and I understand that. But it's the fact of they didn't create some crazy, stupid idea of how to kill them. I mean, they did have ways to kill them. You could stab them. You could shoot them with an arrow. You could turn on a wood chipper and watch them fly in and kill themselves. That's pretty neat. You can do that. I'm not going to lie. You could use their nests to an advantage. You could just create a ton of noise inside of the nests and absolutely just blow them up. But it's the fact that they plant their... That was the other thing about the mist. Now that I just remember that. The other thing about the mist that I wanted to mention is that these things lay their eggs inside of bodies. And they create like little nest areas out of buildings and whatever they can find. So there's a wolf at the end. There's the bodies in the, I guess, kindergarten classroom. Insanity, to be honest with you. And quite frankly, disgusting. I think one of the worst things to see is a corpse that is just full of another thing, because basically that reminds people that we're just meat and another species can use us to survive. As far as movies go, this is probably one of the better ones I've seen. Again, a Netflix original, but a good one. I would actually recommend this one. It's really good. It's only an hour and a half. I was actually able to watch it all and in one sitting. And that's a lot for me. Usually I have to stop and take breaks because some movies just bore the ever-loving shit out of me. But that is going to do it for me here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am ungodly tired, and if this is the audio I go with, it's because I'm just really tired. Been a busy week. I should have more energy, definitely next time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more videos, and I will see you all next time. Peace.